Ezra 5:12b, the second part. I'd like to use this video to discuss this word. If you turn to page 85 in Biblical Aramaic for Biblical Interpreters, I use this verbal root, of course it's actually in Hebrew there, to illustrate the relationship of the verb stems to each other, the G, D, and C, and then their derived stems in the passive and reflexive, and of course the N stem in Hebrew. And the reason I selected this verbal root in Hebrew for this illustration is it's one of the very few verbal roots for which every one of the 7 major stems of Biblical Hebrew are attested in the text. Now, the first thing we notice as we look at this table is perhaps the 3 different meanings that this verbal root has in the Kal. Now, uncover and reveal are very similar. So you could say it's 2 major meanings, but you can see in the table there's a reason for separating them out. Go into exile, though, seems like a strange 3rd meaning. We will actually cover that later as to why that is the same verbal root, but seems to have a very different meaning. The next thing I just want to point out is that here's the nifal stem in Biblical Hebrew, the mediopassive reflexive, where one of the meanings, uncover oneself, seems to cover the TG, the reflexive of the basic Kal idea, and the other meaning seems to reflect the passive of Kal, which would be the GP, in the absence of a Kal passive for that verbal root. Now, we're talking about Aramaic, of course, here, and these meanings in blue and green are the ones attested in Aramaic for this verbal root. So let's clean this up and show actually in Aramaic that what we have is the G stem, that would be the pa'al, the passive for the G stem, that would be the pa'il, be revealed, and then lead into exile, that's the hafel. And that is, of course, what we see here in our verse today that we're looking at. But again, why are there 2 different meanings when all we have in the small corpus of Biblical Aramaic is sort of these 2, the G, which is GP in the passive, and then the lead into exile meaning for the hafel? Well, here's a good reference. In von Soden's article, he shows that this is actually a separate Gimel Lamed Hey verbal root, which comes from Akkadian. Just happens to have the same consonants as this other Semitic root, Gimel Lamed Hey, that has to do with revealing. So that is the reason why we have these 2 meanings in Biblical Aramaic. So let's go back to Ezra 5:12.